The fork clattered onto the plate. Logan Gray's world stopped spinning. His breathing became shallow, rapid, impossible. Across the cramped diner booth, a waitress refilled coffee cups and laughed at a trucker's joke, completely unaware that she was wearing a dead woman's soul on her wrist. The silver bracelet caught the light, that unmistakable wolf mid-howl, frozen in sterling silver, and Logan felt his carefully constructed walls of grief crack wide open. Have you ever seen something that shouldn't exist? Something that makes you question everything you thought you knew about loss, about fate, about whether the people we love ever truly leave us. Because that's exactly what happened to Logan Gray on a rain-soaked Tuesday night in Murphy's Diner. And what came next would shatter everything he believed about moving on. For years, 1,461 days since Sarah's last breath, Logan had counted every single one. At 44, he'd built an empire. Tech innovations that changed industries, investments that made millionaires out of his shareholders, a name that opened doors across continents. But none of it mattered. None of it filled the silence in his 12-bedroom mansion where her laughter used to echo off marble floors. None of it stopped him from setting 2 plates at dinner before remembering she'd never sit across from him again. Tonight, he'd driven 3 hours without knowing where he was going, his Tesla navigating back roads while his mind circled the same questions it had circled for 4 years. Why her? Why so young? Why did the bracelet vanish when everything else? Her clothes, her books, her half-finished cup of tea on the nightstand remained exactly where she'd left them. Murphy's Diner appeared like a beacon through the downpour, its neon sign flickering against the darkness. Sarah would have loved this place. She always chose diners over Michelin-starred restaurants, said real life happened in booths with cracked vinyl and laminate tables that had seen 1,000 stories. Logan pulled into the gravel parking lot and sat in his car for 20 minutes, watching rain hammer the windshield, before finally forcing himself inside. The warmth hit him first, coffee and frying bacon and that indefinable smell of a place where people came not just to eat but to exist. An elderly couple shared a newspaper in the corner. A mother tried to convince her toddler that vegetables were exciting. 2 construction workers argued good-naturedly about football. Normal people living normal lives, something Logan hadn't experienced since before Sarah got sick. He slid into a booth by the window, ordered coffee and pie he wouldn't taste, and tried to remember what it felt like to be human instead of hollow. That's when she appeared. Coffee's fresh, just brewed it 5 minutes ago. Her voice carried genuine warmth, not the mechanical cheerfulness of someone working for tips. She was young, maybe 32, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and eyes that suggested she understood exhaustion intimately. Her name tag read Dakota in faded letters. Logan nodded his thanks, and she poured with the efficiency of someone who'd done this 10,000 times. And that's when he saw it. The bracelet. Sarah's bracelet. The world tilted violently. Sound became muffled, distant. Logan's vision tunneled until all he could see was that silver chain, that howling wolf, the tiny scratch near the clasp where Sarah had caught it on a fence post during a camping trip 7 years ago. The same scratch, the exact same piece. His hand shot out instinctively, catching Dakota's wrist before his brain could stop him. She gasped, pulling back, coffee sloshing dangerously in the pot. "Sir, what are you? Where did you get that bracelet?" Logan's voice came out strangled, desperate. "Please, I need to know where you got that bracelet." Dakota's expression shifted from startled to guarded in an instant. Her free hand covered the bracelet protectively, and she took a careful step backward. "It's mine. It belonged to my grandmother." Her tone made it clear this wasn't up for discussion. But Logan couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything except stare at the impossible object on the stranger's wrist. "That bracelet belonged to my wife. She died 4 years ago at St. Catherine's Hospital, and that bracelet disappeared the night she died. I've searched everywhere, the hospital, the funeral home. I even hired investigators." His voice cracked. "That is Sarah's bracelet. I know every detail of it. That scratch near the clasp. She got that on our anniversary camping trip. The wolf is slightly tarnished on the left ear because she touched it constantly when she was nervous. That is my wife's bracelet." The color drained from Dakota's face. The coffee pot trembled in her hand, and she set it down on the table before she dropped it. Around them, the diner continued its evening rhythm, but Logan and Dakota existed in a bubble of shocked recognition. St. Catherine's Hospital? Dakota whispered. 4 years ago? August 17th. The longest night of my life. Logan's hands shook as he pressed them flat against the table. She was in the oncology ward, room 302. The cancer had spread everywhere. There was nothing left to do except wait. Dakota's legs seemed to give out, and she sank onto the bench across from him without asking. Her fingers traced the wolf charm with a gesture so familiar it made Logan's heart stop. Sarah had done exactly that, thousands of times, a small comfort ritual during her darkest moments. My grandmother was Aurora Chun, Dakota said, her voice barely audible. She was a night nurse in oncology at St. Catherine's for 38 years. She worked the graveyard shift because she said that's when patients needed someone most. When the hospital got quiet and dark and they were alone with their fear, Logan's breath caught. Aurora. The name detonated in his memory like a bomb. He saw her clearly now, the small woman with graying hair and impossibly gentle hands, who'd stayed with Sarah during those endless 3 a.m. hours when pain made sleep impossible. Sarah had loved her, called her an angel, said Aurora understood something about dying that most people never learned about living. Your grandmother, Logan managed. She held Sarah's hand when I had to step out to call Sarah's parents. She sat with her for 3 hours while I dealt with the funeral home. Sarah told me Aurora was the only person who didn't treat her like she was already dead. Tears streamed down Dakota's face. She came home one morning with this bracelet and told me it was the most important gift she'd ever received. She said a dying woman had given it to her, a woman who understood that love doesn't end when our heart stops beating, that it transforms and travels and finds new people to protect. Dakota's voice broke completely. She wore it every single day for the next 8 months until she got sick herself. Pancreatic cancer. By the time they found it, it was everywhere. The revelation hit Logan like a physical blow. Aurora is gone? 14 months ago. Dakota wiped her eyes with her sleeve. She put this bracelet on my wrist 2 days before she died and told me never to take it off. She said it carried more love than anything she'd ever owned, and that I'd need that love to survive what was coming. Logan felt tears on his own cheeks now, hot and unstoppable. Sarah had known. Somehow, in those final days, she'd understood that her most precious possession needed to continue its journey. Not back to Logan, he didn't need the bracelet to remember her, but to someone else who would face the same devastating loss, who would need a physical reminder that love survives death. If you've ever lost someone who changed your entire life, you know this feeling, this moment when you realize they're still protecting you even from beyond the grave. Drop a comment and tell us. Do you believe our loved ones find ways to reach us after they're gone? She gave it to Aurora for you, Logan said, understanding flooding through him. Sarah knew I'd be okay eventually. Broken, but okay. She knew Aurora had a granddaughter she was raising. She must have known Aurora was sick too, or getting sick. She gave her the bracelet so it would end up with you. But why? Dakota looked down at the silver chain through her tears. Why would your wife give away something so precious to strangers? Because that's who Sarah was. Logan's voice filled with a mixture of grief and pride. She believed the only sin was hoarding love when the world was desperate for it. She used to say that everything we own is just borrowed anyway. We can't take it with us, so we should make sure it does good while it's here. Dakota touched the wolf again, and Logan saw his wife in the gesture. Saw Aurora in it too, probably. 3 women connected by loss and love and a piece of jewelry that had become so much more than metal and craftsmanship. Tell me about her, Dakota said suddenly. Please, if I'm wearing her most treasured possession, I need to know who she was. Not the version people tell at funerals, the real person. What made her laugh? What was she afraid of? What did she love more than anything? Logan felt something unlock in his chest. A door he'd kept bolted for 4 years. He'd been so afraid that talking about Sarah would diminish her memory, would turn her into just another story people told. But looking at Dakota's earnest face, seeing his wife's bracelet on her wrist, he realized the opposite was true. Sarah's memory grew stronger when shared, not weaker. She laughed at the worst possible moments. Logan began, a smile breaking through his tears. During serious business meetings, at funerals, once during a Senate hearing when I was testifying. She'd try to hold it in, but it would burst out of her like sunshine. He paused, remembering. She was terrified of butterflies. I know it makes no sense. Beautiful, harmless butterflies, and she'd run away screaming. But she'd walk right up to a growling dog without hesitation. Dakota laughed, a sound of genuine delight cutting through the grief. She loved thunderstorms, Logan continued, the words flowing easier now. She'd drag me outside in the rain, dance in our backyard at 2 a.m. while lightning split the sky. The neighbors thought we were insane. She'd spin in circles with her arms out and her face to the sky, and she'd shout poetry at the thunder. His voice softened. She was so alive, even when she was dying, especially when she was dying. She said she finally understood what mattered and what didn't. What mattered? Dakota asked quietly. This, connections, moments of genuine humanity between people. Logan gestured at the space between them. She'd love this. Two strangers in a diner, brought together by a bracelet and shared grief, finding something beautiful in the wreckage. They sat in silence for a long moment, the diner buzzing around them. Finally, Logan cleared his throat. I want you to keep the bracelet, he said firmly. Please don't argue. It found its way to exactly where Sarah intended. She gave it to Aurora, who gave it to you. That was the plan all along. I couldn't possibly, but I want to offer you something else. Not charity. Sarah would haunt me if I tried that, but an opportunity. Logan leaned forward. I run a foundation in Sarah's name. We help families facing medical catastrophe. We pay bills, provide housing, arrange childcare, do whatever it takes to keep families together when illness tries to tear them apart. Dakota shook her head. I appreciate the thought, but I can't accept handouts. Aurora raised me better than that. It's not a handout, it's a job. Logan's words came faster as the idea crystallized. I need someone who truly understands what these families are experiencing. Someone who's lived through the nightmare of watching someone you love deteriorate while bills pile up and the system fails you at every turn. Someone with real compassion, earned through suffering. You don't know anything about me, Dakota protested. I know you're working here, which means you probably have at least 2 other jobs based on how exhausted you look. I know you sacrificed everything to care for Aurora because that's what love demanded. I know you're precisely the kind of person Sarah trusted with her most precious possession. Logan's voice gentled. And I know that bracelet didn't end up on your wrist by accident. They both saw something in you worth protecting. Dakota stared at him, conflict warring across her features. I work here at a call center during the day, and I drive for a rideshare app on weekends. I live in a weekly motel because I can't afford first and last month's rent for an apartment. I spent everything taking care of Aurora. Quit my job at the law firm, sold my car, cashed out my retirement. Her laugh was bitter. I'm not exactly anyone's idea of a success story. You're exactly what I'm looking for, Logan said simply. You understand sacrifice. You understand that some things matter more than money or comfort or security. The people who come to our foundation, they need someone who gets it, who won't judge them for the impossible choices they're making. Dakota touched the bracelet again, and in that gesture, Logan saw Sarah encouraging her, saw Aurora nodding her approval. The chain of love continued, link by link, person to person. One condition, Dakota said finally. I want to know everything about Sarah, not the edited version, the complicated, messy, real version. Her fears, her regrets, the fights you had, the moments she was difficult. If I'm going to carry her legacy forward, I need to know the complete truth. Logan felt his heart crack open in the most beautiful way. She would have absolutely loved you, he said. And yes, I'll tell you everything. The good, the bad, the moments I wish I could take back, and the ones I'd relive forever if I could. Make sure to subscribe to our channel. We share stories like this every week that remind us why love and compassion are the most powerful forces in the world. 9 months later, Logan stood in the foundation's newly opened community center, watching Dakota lead a support group for families navigating medical crises. She wore the silver bracelet every single day, and he caught her touching it during difficult moments, drawing strength from the accumulated love it represented. The transformation had been extraordinary. Dakota had moved into a decent apartment near the foundation, traded her 3 crushing jobs for meaningful work that utilized her abandoned legal training, and slowly, carefully begun to heal from Aurora's death. More than that, she'd become the heart of the foundation, the person families trusted, the voice that understood their terror and exhaustion and desperate hope. Logan, meanwhile, had rediscovered his purpose. Building companies had made him wealthy, but building this community with Dakota made him feel alive for the first time since Sarah died. He felt his wife's presence everywhere in this work. In the mother who didn't have to choose between her child's medication and rent, in the father who got to stay home with his dying partner instead of working 3 jobs, in the teenager who could focus on school instead of worrying about medical bills. Mr. Gray, a young woman approached, her infant daughter sleeping against her shoulder. Dakota said, "You wanted to meet us. The foundation covered Emma's surgery and our rent for 6 months. Her voice broke. You saved our family. I don't know how to thank you." Logan smiled, the expression natural now after months of practice. "Thank my wife. This was her dream long before she got sick. She always said love was the only thing in the world that multiplies when you give it away." As the evening wound down, Logan and Dakota walked together through the community center, turning off lights and checking that everything was secure. Through the windows, the city sparkled with 1,000 lights, each one representing a life, a story, a struggle, a hope. "Aurora would be so incredibly proud," Logan said, watching Dakota lock the front door. "You've helped more families in 9 months than most people help in a lifetime." "We've helped them," Dakota corrected gently. "This works because you understand their pain, because you've sat in those same hospital rooms, made those same impossible decisions, felt that same terror." She paused, touching the bracelet one final time before they parted ways. "Sarah's still here, you know, in every family that stays together, in every person who doesn't have to face catastrophe alone, in every moment of compassion we show." Logan nodded, feeling the truth settle deep in his bones. She used to say that love was the only force in the universe that grew stronger the more you shared it, that hoarding it killed it, but giving it away made it immortal. "Aurora said almost the same thing," Dakota replied, smiling up at the stars emerging in the darkening sky. "She told me that kindness creates ripples we can't see, touching lives we'll never know about, creating chains of compassion that stretch across time." "I think they're both watching tonight," Logan said softly, satisfied with what their love created. As Logan drove home to his mansion that finally felt warm again, he thought about the mysterious alchemy of grief and grace. A bracelet had led him to Dakota. Together, they'd built something beautiful from their shared brokenness. Sarah's love lived on, not as a memory locked in the past, but as a living, breathing force that touched new lives every single day. The silver bracelet with its howling wolf continued its journey, carrying with it the accumulated love of 3 generations of women who understood that the most precious gifts are those we release into the world with open hands. And in the quiet moments between one act of kindness and the next, Logan could almost hear Sarah humming again. Not with sorrow, but threads of hope, woven through even the darkest moments.